Tina Cooks More Italian.
This is made possible through the generous support of KC's Body Connections Massage Center, connecting body, mind, and spirit. G's Hot Dog Cafe, home of the Chicago Dog. Enterprise Bank, we help create opportunities for your business. Papa John's Pizza, Leominster, Fitchburg, Marlboro, and Worcester. This is arboreal rice. This is what you use to make risotto. Today we're making seafood risotto and artichoke pesto risotto. Stay tuned. Welcome to Tina Cooks More Italian. I'm Tina Piermarini. Today we're going to be doing risottos. We're going to start out because we need broth and we need it hot, not cold. So I'm just going to open up, there's one chicken and there's 4 vegetables because I don't want to really have a beef or a chicken stock, but I want it to have flavor. I try to get the low sodium broths, because then you don't have all that salt added in. Some broths can be very salty. This is a nice rich colored broth too, it looks great. I'm going to open 5 cans, which is a little more than 5 cups. But that's all right, because if I don't use it, I'm just going to let it cool down and stick it in the freezer, and you can either make ice cube trays with it, little ice cubes of broth, or you can just freeze it in small containers. I'm going to move this to the stove, and we're going to put it on, because we want it to get hot. When you're making a risotto, you want your broth hot so that it doesn't cool everything down and take time to warm up. Okay. Bring this to the thing. All right. Now I am going to get some onions and garlic, and we're going to start some preparation. Now this is my refrigerator. It's like a storage vault. Okay, we got an onion, we have some garlic, and yes, I did put aside my seafood. See? Scallops and shrimp. It's going to be good. Okay, so now we're just going to come over here, and I'm just going to chop some onions real fine and some garlic real fine, because I don't want big clumps. I want it minced. Now I'm going to peel some garlic. All right, so we have our garlic nice and minced, and we have our onions kind of like a fine medium chop. Okay, I'm going to set those aside. Now the next thing I have to do is I have to clean my shrimp, because we're going to do a seafood risotto, and we're going to do an artichoke pesto risotto. Now the artichoke pesto I got when I was on vacation this summer at a place me and Carl had gone and visited. Now there's one thing I want to show you about these shrimp. These shrimp are deveined. They were frozen, and I got them deveined, but some of them are not. Like, well, that one's deveined. And maybe they're all deveined. Some of them are not, so you'll have to cut down the backbone and take the intestinal tract out, because you don't want to eat that. It's black and it's not really pretty to look at. And let's face it, it's the intestinal tract. How good can that be? These were frozen shrimp, and the scallops were also frozen. But you got to make sure they're thawed out. I thawed them out in the refrigerator for at least 48 hours. It takes a couple of days for them to thaw out. But I bought them that way because I really didn't like what was in the showcase. So a lot of times when I'm buying shrimp or scallops, not so much haddock or anything like that, I like to buy that fresh, but when I'm going to do something like this, it's okay to buy frozen shrimp. There we go. Okay, now these, I'm just going to put over here for now, like this. Make sure you get all these little... Now the thing about scallops, when you're making scallops, is you got to make sure that there's no little, that is a chewy part of the scallop. Make sure that there's none of those on there. I forget what they call it. See, here's another one. It's like a tendon. It's the tendon that keeps them attached to their shell. You don't want to eat that because that's going to be tough. Like that right there. Okay, so we got rid of all the tendons. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to move over and we're going to start the risottos. Put our seafood here. Now the first step I want to do is I want to make a sun-dried tomato puree. So I'm going to take some sun-dried tomatoes that's packed in olive oil, and I'm going to put them in my food processor here. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this going. This is a smaller bowl inside a bigger bowl. Turn this on and let it chop those up. And then I'm going to drizzle in a little bit of olive oil. A little tiny drizzle at a time so that we can get a paste going here. I'm just going to let that work because I want it to get fine, fine, fine. Just a little tiny more olive oil. It's almost like a, I'm not using any pine nuts, so it's not really considered a pesto, but it's a puree. This is going to go into the seafood risotto, believe it or not. Okay, let's see how we look. It's okay, that looks better. That looks good. Here we go. I'm just gonna do a little tiny bit more and then we'll be good to go. Here we go. Okay, now we're off with this. I'm gonna take this out and this. And I'm going to put this aside, and I'm going to move this out of the way. I always put my blades back in because you don't want to leave those on the counter. They're extremely sharp. Okay, now I've got my little spoons here and stuff because I'm going to be like a mixologist today. I'm going to do two versions of this rice. I'm going to do a pesto version with the artichoke pesto. I bought this on vacation and I've been dying to try it. It's an artichoke pesto and I can't wait to see how it tastes. And the other one is going to be the seafood, and I'm going to do it with a touch of tomatoes, which I also had on vacation. Now I'm going to take these frying pans. Well, I like a nice, you want a good frying area when you're doing a risotto. You don't want to use a small pan. So I usually use this when I make a risotto, but I'm going to also use this because I'm doing two. So I need to have two areas to work in. We have our broth in the back here that's nice and hot. I'm going to shut that off now because it's really steaming hot. That's how you want it. Okay, so now I'm going to start with the seafood. I'm saying Alfredo. It's risotto. Okay, this is on nice and low. I'm going to bump this up just a tish. I want it just barely touching the bottom of that pan. I don't want it really intensely hot. I'm going to start out with a little bit of olive oil, like that. Now I'm going to start off doing one at a time, because once the broth starts incorporating, then it's going to, you can leave it alone here and there. We're going to take a little bit of onion, a little bit of the garlic, and we're going to let that saute up. Okay? I am going to put in some butter, because the butter will make it taste delish. Delish, delish. About a tablespoon or so. Okay? And I'm going to save that other tablespoon for the other risotto. Now I'm going to get going over here. This is going to be a very basic, simple one. I'm going to put a little oil. And a tablespoon of butter. And our onions. And our garlic. And we're going to let this saute up. I'm going to bump this up just a tish more too. This is actually a wok, which I really like it a lot. Of course, I use it as a frying pan too, which, if it works, you use it. I'm going to put 1 spoon in here and 1 spoon in there. Because we have people in my house, believe it or not, that does not like seafood, which I can't understand that at all. Okay. Now we're going to let those saute. I'm going to get this going. Now in this particular frying pan, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this aside. I'm going to get this really screaming hot right now. I'm going to bump that heat up all the way because I want to saute my scallops and my shrimp. Now what I'm going to do with my shrimp is I'm going to take them and I'm going to cut them right in half, like that, while that's getting nice and hot. I'm not going to leave the seafood in the pan because I want to do my risotto first. Okay, so this is what I'm doing. Okay, cutting these in half. The scallops, I'll probably cut afterwards. I like to cook them whole because they're easier to handle in a frying pan. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I am going to take a paper towel. Excuse me, 1 minute. I got it right here. Don't move. So. And I'm going to make sure I get all the water off these scallops because they won't brown nicely if they're wet. Okay. I'm going to put them right in the butter and oil and in the seasonings here. Now, when I opened the show, I said that we had an arboreal rice. Arboreal rice is a rice that's made for this kind of risotto, that's a nice and creamy risotto. Now, I have done a risotto show before, but it was with long grain rice, which is another style of risotto that we had, that you made the rice balls with. Now, even though this is going to be a creamier risotto, you can still make rice balls with it if you want to. I use the arboreal rice for this because it's a much more creamier texture. It's loose. It's nice and creamy. You'll see as we start cooking. Okay, so I got my little fork over here. I don't want to cook these like all the way through, but I want to cook them, most of the way through because I'm going to take them off. I'm cooking them in the onions and garlic because I want them to taste like something. I don't want them not to. Now, while they're here, of course, I'm going to season a little bit the scallops, okay, with that. A little pinch of parsley on each little bit of scallop there. And we're going to do some salt. And there we go. Now, while I did that, I'm also going to throw in my shrimp, now that I cut them all in half. Oh, I actually didn't because somebody interrupted me when I was cooking them. Gotta finish cutting these, Carl. Okay, that's in half. I forgot which ones I had cut in half. There we go. Now, these shrimps are not going to take long at all. At all. We're just going to swirl them around like this in the flavor. This is also going to flavor the oil and the butter with the seafood so that you can have some of that seafood flavor in your risotto. This is why I'm using a vegetable stock with only one chicken, because I don't want an intense flavor of chicken in here. So we're just going to saute those around. Give those another minute. Now this is going pretty good. Now this is the other risotto. We're going to let that fish go a little bit. All right. I'm going to use the artichoke pesto in this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with a little bit in here, like that. And I'm going to use a little tiny tish of white wine in here, like that. About a quarter of a cup, because it'll give it a nice flavor. I don't want to use wine in both of them. I want to use wine in one. Now I'm actually melting down this pesto because I want to start the rice tasting like something, and if I need it when I'm done, I'll add a little more. But I want to start it out like this. Okay, there we go. So now I'm going to take, I am going to remove this fish now, because I think this fish is all set to go. Okay? Need a slotted spoon. Now even though it's not all the way finished, I'm still going to take it out, because it'll finish up when we incorporate it in with the rice when it's done. Okay, now we have our flavors in both of our rices that we're going to be starting. Now the only thing I have to add that's left to add to this is the tomato pesto, okay, which I'm going to add just a little bit, because we don't want to overpower it, like this. This actually is not a pesto, it's just a sun-dried tomato puree, because I didn't want to add pine nuts to it. Okay, so now I'm going to take, there's 2 cups of rice here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1 cup and put it here. All right, and 1 cup and put it here. Okay, now this is the secret to a good risotto. You add a little bit of broth at a time, you bring it to a simmer, and you work it in. Now this has to simmer down until the risotto is nice and soft. All right, we're going to stir this around. We're going to add 2 ladles here. 1, 2, and we're going to simmer this down so it's nice and it stays nice and creamy. Now you want to be able to work it around, work it around, work it around. Now what I'm going to do here at this point is I'm going to season my risotto. I'm going to use a little bit of salt in each one. Okay. Now I'm doing 2 at a time. If it's going to be too complicated for you, do 1 at a time. Or try one and not the other. A little bit of parsley in there. Parsley. I'm going to put some black pepper in here. Some black pepper in here. Now to this tomato one, I am going to add a little bit of saffron, which is a very expensive, very, very, very fancy spice. But I think it'll pick this right up. This is very, very strong, so you don't need a lot. I'm just going to put in, of course, if you can get it out of here, that's the big thing. About that much. Just a few little things. And there you go. That goes right in there like that. There we go. I'm going to stir that around. Now see how this is starting to thicken up and it's going to start absorbing. Now this process of adding the broth and stirring and adding the broth and stirring is going to take a good 20 minutes. So we're going to be looking back at this time to time until it's all nice and done. All right. See, this one's getting nice and thick. Oh, very good. Oh, I'm going to like that one, Carl. That's going to be good. So this is basically what I'm going to be doing. Stirring this down and stirring this down. Okay, so I'm going to keep this process up of adding a ladle of broth to each risotto until the risotto is nice and tender and creamy. You don't want a dry risotto. That's not what this risotto is all about. You want it nice and creamy. So we're going to just keep doing this, adding in the broth and stirring, and it's going to thicken up. See how thick this is getting? This is ready for some more broth. So we're going to do one. And this is the process that I'm going to keep up until the risotto is nice and soft. Okay? So this is what we're going to do. Alrighty, so this is our artichoke pesto risotto. Now, the reason why we came back from our little cooking thing here is this is just about ready, and so isn't this. Now, if you come over and see this one, this is nice and creamy. You can see the sun-dried tomatoes in there and everything. Now, one thing that I did forget, and we don't like to forget things, is pepper. So I'm going to add some nice black pepper in here. Now, these risottos I've tasted, okay, this rice, and it's just about there. It's just got a tiny, tiny little bit of a bite left. Let me mix that in so I don't fry myself. Now what I want to do is I want to fix them so that the last few minutes of cooking, whatever I put in there can incorporate into flavor. Now this is it's very hot. Still has a little bit of a bite, but as it sits, it'll even cook more. I'm going to throw in a little more of this artichoke pesto because I want to taste it a little more. Okay? I'm just going to mix it in. I want you to notice, come in real close, Carl, that the rice is puffed up. It's like twice the size it was. Now that pesto is going to mix in. Okay? Now I don't want this boiling so hard. See how nice and creamy this is? This is how you want it. You want it nice and creamy. So I'm going to bring this down to a low simmer, because I can leave it on a nice low simmer for a while. I'm going to do the same thing to this one. Bring it on a nice low simmer. I'm going to stir this one around. I already ate with that one, so I'm going to try this one with this one. Same thing. You want to check your rice. God. Unbelievable. All right, so now what I'm going to do now, this one is just about ready. Now this seafood has some juice that it's made. I'm going to throw that right in there with it. Okay? And the next thing I'm going to do, I know this is going to sound crazy, but it's going to work out. I just know it is. I'm going to get my zester, because this is seafood. I'm going to zest a little tiny bit, not a lot, of lemon zest in here. And I washed this lemon, and I just want the zest. Oh, we don't want the label. That's going to taste crappy. I'll have to pull my label off. Just a little bit, just like that, because that's going to pick up seafood. Oh yeah, this one's awesome. All right, now I'm going to let that just sit on a nice low simmer, because this one, believe it or not, is actually further along than that one is. How that happened, I don't know, because of the different pans and the different materials that it's made from. All right, so we're just going to leave this right here on a nice low simmer so that it gets nice and nice. The only other thing I want to grab in here is a little bit of Romano cheese. Because it is risotto, and I think of risotto with cheese. Okay, now a little bit of cheese in here, because that's going to pick up the artichoke flavor too. And yes, I am going to put a little tiny bit in my seafood one. And there we go. And that's it. I'm going to let these rest here for about 5 more minutes, because these are ready to go. And we're going to plate them up. Just gonna let this simmer in for 5 more minutes. Okie dokie. We'll be back. All right, our risottos are ready. And they look delicious, delicious, delicious. Now this pan is real hot because it's got the edges there. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna use a scraper. Now I want you to notice how nice and creamy this risotto is. It's not sticky or dry. It's nice and creamy. And this is the artichoke one. And it does look delicious, doesn't it? I'm gonna throw this back on the stove. And then we are gonna do our seafood one, which is I'm very excited about. Because I had this while I was on vacation and I said, I gotta do a cooking show on this one. And we got the artichoke just because I wanted something different. My plates are a little bit big. I was kind of thinking small, so, but that's okay. Spread it out a little bit. Okay, now, naturally, I'm gonna taste the seafood one. I just want to tell you while I'm waiting for this to cool off, don't forget to check my website, www.tinacooks.com, which was designed by Intricate Consultants, beep beep, my son and my nephew. There you'll find instructions on how to get my cookbook. Really good. Thank you for watching Tina Cooks More Italian. Have a good night. You ready? Woo, those onions are jumping. They're strong too. They're making me cry. Okay.
What's the matter, your eyes hurt?
Oh, those onions are wicked strong. Believe me, when they say you can stick them in the refrigerator and they don't stay strong, that's not true. Because these onions are kept in the refrigerator and they're making me cry like heck.